Commander Vextar stood at attention before his latest batch of Academy recruits, his forearms crossed in what he considered an intimidating display of authority. The Galactic Defense Academy's most prestigious training facility hummed with the quiet efficiency of a dozen alien species working in perfect harmony. Well, almost perfect harmony. "Welcome, cadets, to what will undoubtedly be the most challenging experience of your pathetic little lives," Vextar announced, his voice carrying the kind of condescension that only came from centuries of military superiority. His reptilian features twisted into what might have been a smile if you were feeling generous. "I am Commander Vextar, and I have the distinct pleasure of transforming you from whatever sorry excuses for warriors your species produced into something that might actually be useful in combat." The assembled cadets represented the cream of the galactic crop. There was Zrok, a hulking crystalline being whose species had conquered half their home galaxy before breakfast. Quilia, whose insectoid race had perfected military tactics while most species were still figuring out fire. Vex, a tentacled creature from the deep void whose people had never lost a space battle in recorded history. And then there was Maya Thompson, human. 5 feet 6 inches of what Vextar considered the galaxy's greatest joke. She stood there with her soft pink skin, inefficient bipedal locomotion, and those ridiculously tiny eyes that could barely see past the visible spectrum. Her sandy brown hair was pulled back in a regulation ponytail, and she wore the same military uniform as everyone else, though it somehow looked less impressive on her unremarkable frame. "Ah yes," Vextar said, his attention fixing on Maya like a predator spotting wounded prey. "Our special guest. Cadet Thompson, representing the newly discovered species known as humans." He practically spat the word. "Tell me, Thompson, what qualifies your species for admission to this academy?" Maya shifted slightly, her brown eyes meeting his gaze with what appeared to be nervous determination. "Well, sir, we're pretty good at not dying when we probably should." A few of the alien cadets exchanged glances. Zrok's crystalline features actually seemed to shimmer with amusement. "Not dying," Vextar repeated slowly, savoring each syllable. "How wonderfully primitive." "Well, Thompson, I have excellent news for you. You're going to serve as a perfect example for your classmates of what happens when inferior species attempt to play soldier with their betters." Maya nodded earnestly. "That sounds about right, sir." "Oh, this is going to be delicious," Vextar thought to himself. In his 300 years of military service, he'd broken the spirits of countless recruits, but none had ever provided such perfect material for demonstration purposes. A human of all things. The galaxy's newest laughingstock. The Academy's training philosophy was simple and brutal: push cadets beyond their breaking point, then push them further. Those who survived became the elite. Those who didn't were quietly transferred to supply divisions on remote outposts where their incompetence couldn't endanger anyone important. Maya Thompson, Vextar decided, would provide the most educational breakdown in Academy history. The next morning brought Maya's first taste of what Vextar called character building, though it looked suspiciously like elaborate torture designed by someone with a physics degree and anger management issues. "Today's exercise is simple," Vextar announced to the assembled cadets. "Traverse the quantum obstacle course while maintaining full combat readiness. The course adapts to exploit your species' natural weaknesses. Zrok, your crystalline structure makes you vulnerable to sonic disruption. Quilia, your compound eyes will be challenged by strobing lights. Bex, the course will simulate various atmospheric pressures." He turned to Maya with barely contained glee. "And Thompson, well, the course will simply exist. That should be challenge enough." The other cadets completed the course with varying degrees of success. Zrok powered through despite the sonic attacks, his crystal body resonating but holding firm. Quilia navigated the light maze with precision, her compound eyes adapting faster than the strobes could disorient her. Bex flowed through the pressure changes like liquid adaptation. Maya, on the other hand, face planted into the first obstacle, got electrocuted by the second, and somehow managed to trigger a safety protocol that nobody knew existed when she accidentally activated 17 different traps simultaneously. Fascinating, Vextar observed as Maya extracted herself from what appeared to be an alien equivalent of silly string. Tell me, Thompson, in your species military doctrine, is spectacular failure considered a valid tactical approach? Well, sir, Maya replied, wiping some sort of purple goo from her face, my grandfather always said that if you're going to fail, you might as well fail so hard that everyone else feels better about themselves. The other cadets couldn't hide their amusement. Even Quilia's mandibles twitched in what passed for a smile among her people. Day after day, Vextar escalated his training scenarios. Maya faced combat simulations against opponents twice her size, technology interfaces designed for species with 3 times her cognitive processing speed, and psychological warfare that would have broken seasoned veterans. And she failed. Spectacularly. Consistently. Creatively. During weapons training, she somehow managed to make a standard plasma rifle achieve what the manufacturer had insisted was impossible. It overheated, froze, and exploded simultaneously. How did you even manage that? Bex asked, genuinely curious as firefighting drones swarmed around Maya's smoking position. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure, Maya admitted, patting out a small fire on her sleeve. I think I pressed the buttons in the wrong order. There is no wrong order, Zrock pointed out. The interface is psychically linked. You just think about firing and it fires. Oh, Maya said. That explains a lot. But while Maya's failures provided endless entertainment for her fellow cadets and sadistic satisfaction for Vextar, she had developed some peculiar habits. She asked odd questions about the training equipment. She took detailed notes about the facility's layout. She spent her free time studying the Academy's technical manuals with the intensity of someone preparing for the galaxy's most boring exam. What are you reading? Quilia asked one evening, finding Maya hunched over a tablet in the common area. Advanced Tactical Simulation Programming. 3rd edition, Maya replied without looking up. Fascinating stuff. Did you know that most military AI systems have a built-in bias toward conventional tactical approaches? They're programmed to expect logical, predictable responses. That makes sense, Quilia said. Logic and predictability are the foundations of successful military strategy. Maya finally looked up, and for just a moment her expression seemed less like a confused recruit and more like someone who was very carefully not smiling. Yeah, she said. That's what makes it interesting. Vextar, observing from across the room, felt a small flicker of something that might have been concern. But no, he decided. It was just a human trying to understand concepts beyond her primitive comprehension. Nothing more. After all, what could possibly go wrong? 3 weeks into what Vextar privately called Operation Humiliate the Human, opportunity knocked in the form of Admiral Corax and his entourage of Academy officials. The quarterly inspection had arrived early, and with it the perfect audience for Vextar's masterpiece demonstration. Admiral, Vextar said, his scales practically glowing with pride as he greeted the inspection team. Your timing is impeccable. I have prepared a demonstration that will revolutionize our understanding of species limitations in military applications. Admiral Corax, a towering insectoid with compound eyes that had seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations, clicked his mandibles with interest. Bold claims, Commander. What do you have in mind? The Gauntlet of Impossibility, Vextar announced, gesturing toward the Academy's most advanced combat simulator. An unwinnable scenario designed to test a cadet's ability to maintain composure under absolute hopelessness. I've programmed it specifically to demonstrate the futility of including certain, less developed species in our military structure. The simulator dominated the Academy's central training hall, a massive chamber capable of creating any environment the programmers could imagine. Its walls hummed with the power of quantum processors running millions of tactical calculations per second. The scenario is elegantly simple, Vextar continued as the inspection team gathered around the control platform. The cadet must defend Deep Space Station Omega against an overwhelming force of enemy vessels. The station's shields are failing, weapons are limited, and reinforcements are 7 hours away. The enemy will arrive in 6. "And the catch?" asked Dr. Kethrill, the Academy's head of psychological evaluation. "There is no solution," Vextar replied with satisfaction. "The scenario is mathematically impossible to win. It's designed to reveal how different species handle inevitable defeat. Most maintain dignity. Some attempt heroic last stands. Others negotiate surrender terms." He paused dramatically. "Humans, as we shall see, simply panic." Maya had been watching the setup from across the hall, ostensibly reviewing technical manuals but clearly listening to every word. When Vextar called her over, she approached with the same nervous determination she'd shown since arriving at the Academy. "Thompson," Vextar announced to his distinguished audience, "will demonstrate humanity's approach to impossible military scenarios. I predict complete psychological breakdown within the first 10 minutes, followed by either catatonic withdrawal or hysterical panic." "That seems rather harsh, Commander," Admiral Korax observed. "Not harsh, Admiral. Educational. The galaxy needs to understand the limitations of our potential allies. Better to learn now than during an actual crisis." Maya stepped into the simulator's central chamber, the walls immediately transforming into the bridge of Deep Space Station Omega. Through the viewports, stars twinkled peacefully, though long-range sensors were already detecting the approaching enemy fleet. "Remember," Vextar's voice echoed through the chamber's speakers, "this is an unwinnable scenario. The purpose is not to achieve victory, but to observe how you handle certain defeat." "Understood, sir," Maya replied, settling into the command chair with apparent nervousness. Her hands trembled slightly as she accessed the station's systems. The inspection team gathered around Vextar's control station, watching Maya's vital signs and performance metrics on a bank of monitors. Her heart rate was elevated but steady. Brain activity showed normal stress responses. "Beginning scenario," Vextar announced, and the simulation came to life. Warning klaxons blared as the enemy fleet dropped out of hyperspace. 67 hostile vessels arranged in perfect attack formation, their weapons already charging for the initial bombardment. "Station Commander," the AI announced in Maya's earpiece, "enemy fleet has achieved weapons lock. Estimate time to shield failure, 43 minutes. Estimated time to total station destruction, 57 minutes. Maya stared at the tactical display, her face a mask of what Vextar interpreted as dawning horror. She fumbled with the controls, accessing system after system with the desperate urgency of someone realizing just how thoroughly screwed they were. "Textbook panic response," Vextar murmured to his audience. "Notice the increased perspiration, the erratic breathing pattern. It's classic human fear reaction." What he didn't notice was the way Maya's eyes were tracking across the displays, cataloging information with mechanical precision. Or how her apparently panic button pressing was actually accessing subsystems that most cadets never even knew existed. "This should be over soon," Vextar predicted confidently. "Humans have a notoriously low tolerance for hopeless situations." On the screen, the enemy fleet began its attack run, and Maya Thompson smiled. The first thing that should have tipped off Vextar that something was wrong was the way Maya stopped hyperventilating exactly 37 seconds into the enemy attack. The second thing should have been her sudden shift from fumbling panic to surgical precision at the control interface. The third thing was when she started laughing. "That's interesting," Maya said, her voice carrying through the simulator's speakers with a tone that was less terrified cadet and more kid who just found the cheat codes. "You know, Vextar, this scenario has some really fascinating design flaws." "Design flaws?" Vextar's confident smirk faltered slightly. "Thompson, you're supposed to be managing a desperate defense, not critiquing the programming." "Oh, I'm definitely managing something," Maya replied, her fingers dancing across the control interface with newfound expertise. "Did you know that when you designed this unwinnable scenario, you forgot to account for human psychological warfare tactics?" On the tactical display, something impossible was happening. Instead of mounting a conventional defense against the overwhelming enemy force, Maya had done something that broke every rule of military engagement, and she'd opened a direct communications channel to the enemy fleet's command ship. "Unknown vessel, this is Commander Maya Thompson of Deep Space Station Omega," she broadcast, her voice carrying across open frequencies. "I'm calling to discuss your extended warranty." Admiral Korax blinked several times with his compound eyes. Did she just what? "Your ships appear to be equipped with Mark VI plasma cannons," Maya continued conversationally, as if she weren't addressing a hostile fleet preparing to blow her to atoms. "Those are nice guns, but they have a known overheating issue when fired in rapid sequence. The manufacturer issued a recall 3 months ago." "This is highly irregular," Dr. Kethril observed, though he couldn't hide his fascination with the unfolding scene. The enemy fleet, apparently as confused as everyone else, had actually paused their attack to listen to this bizarre transmission. "Furthermore," Maya continued, "I couldn't help but notice that your attack formation is the classic Korvalan battle wedge, which was revolutionary military doctrine about 50 years ago. These days it's taught in first-year tactical classes as an example of what not to do." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice had shifted from friendly customer service to something much more dangerous. "You see, the thing about the Korvalan battle wedge is that it concentrates all your firepower forward while leaving your flanks completely exposed to cross-vector attacks. It works great against conventional defensive positions, but it's absolutely terrible against asymmetrical response tactics." "What is she doing?" Vextar demanded, frantically checking his control systems. "The simulation parameters are locked. She can't change the scenario." "She's not changing the scenario," Admiral Korax realized, his mandibles clicking with growing amazement. "She's changing the enemy's behavior." Maya had done something that the simulation's AI had never encountered before. She'd started a psychological warfare campaign against fictional enemies, and the AI was adapting their responses in real time to account for the new variables she'd introduced. "Here's the thing about humans," Maya continued her broadcast, and now she was definitely smiling. "We're really good at finding patterns, and your attack pattern is based on the assumption that I'm going to try to fight you conventionally. Shield walls, focused fire, textbook defensive tactics." She paused for effect. "But I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to do something that your tactical computers aren't programmed to handle. I'm going to use your own weapons against you. And with that, Matt, Mamiose D. Maya Thompson began systematically exploiting every single vulnerability in the gauntlet of impossibilities programming that she'd been cataloging for the past 3 weeks. Starting with the fact that the enemy AI was designed to respond to logical military tactics, which meant it had absolutely no idea what to do when faced with someone who fought like a caffeinated human with a grudge and a detailed understanding of system architecture. "Impossible," Vextar whispered, watching his perfect demonstration crumble before his eyes. "Not impossible," Maya corrected, somehow hearing him despite the simulator's soundproofing. "Just improbable. There's a difference." The enemy fleet was beginning to realize that something had gone very wrong with their perfect attack plan. What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for the next 2 centuries. Though most instructors would preface their lectures with warnings about attempting Maya Thompson's tactics without proper psychological evaluation and hazard insurance. Instead of trying to defend Deep Space Station Omega, Maya had turned it into the galaxy's most dangerous booby trap. "You see," she explained to her increasingly bewildered audience, "both real and simulated, the station's reactor has a built-in safety feature that prevents catastrophic overload. But those safety features can be temporarily disabled for emergency power routing." She pressed a series of commands that made Vextar's scales turn an alarming shade of pale green. "Thompson, what are you doing?" he demanded. "Creating a fake reactor breach," Maya replied cheerfully. "The enemy's scanners will detect massive energy fluctuations and conclude that the station is about to explode. Standard procedure is to maintain minimum safe distance until the explosion, then move in to confirm the kill." The enemy fleet, following their programming logic, immediately began backing away from the station as their sensors detected what appeared to be an imminent catastrophic failure. Except, Maya continued, the reactor isn't actually going to explode. "I've just rerouted all available power to the station's tractor beam array." Admiral Corax's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. "She's turned the entire station into a massive tractor beam projector." "The beautiful thing about tractor beams," Maya said, warming to her subject, "is that they work both ways. You can use them to pull things toward you, or—" she engaged the system. "You can use them to push things away." What followed was less a space battle and more a demonstration of advanced physics applied with malicious creativity. Maya had effectively turned Deep Space Station Omega into a gravitational slingshot, using the enemy fleet's own momentum against them. Ships that had been approaching in perfect formation suddenly found themselves careening off course as invisible forces grabbed them and hurled them into their neighbors. The Corvan battle wedge collapsed into chaos as vessels collided, spun out of control, and generally discovered that their tactical computers had no protocols for dealing with someone who used space stations as kinetic weapons. "This is impossible," Vextar repeated, though his voice had risen to something approaching a squeak. "The simulation parameters don't allow for this kind of system manipulation." "Actually, they do," Maya replied, and for the first time since the demonstration began, she turned to look directly at the observation deck. "I've spent the last 3 weeks studying every technical manual in the Academy database. Turns out your unwinnable scenario has more holes than a cheese grater." She gestured to the tactical display, where the enemy fleet was now in complete disarray. For example, the enemy AI is programmed to respond to conventional tactics, but it has no protocols for dealing with what humans call aggressive creativity. It's like playing chess against someone who's convinced the board is actually a checkers set. Admiral Corax leaned forward. "Are you telling us that you've been deliberately failing for 3 weeks in order to study our training systems?" Maya's smile could have powered a small starship. "Admiral, I should probably mention that my real name is Major Maya Thompson, Human Strategic Intelligence Division. I've been undercover here as part of a joint evaluation program between our species." The silence that followed was so complete that you could have heard a pin drop in vacuum. "Strategic intelligence," Dr. Kethril managed, specializing in asymmetrical warfare and enemy psychology, Maya confirmed. "My job was to evaluate the galaxy's military training standards and identify potential weaknesses that hostile forces might exploit." She turned back to the tactical display, where the enemy fleet was now completely neutralized, their ships either disabled by collisions or trapped in gravitational eddies that would take hours to escape. "The good news is that your simulation technology is impressive. The bad news is that your tactical programming is about as sophisticated as a children's toy." Vextar's forearms hung limply at his sides as he stared at the impossible scene before him. His perfect demonstration had become a perfect disaster. His carefully designed humiliation had turned into his own public execution. "But," he whispered, "you failed every single test, every simulation, every training exercise." Maya's expression softened slightly, though her smile remained razor-sharp. "Commander Vextar, let me tell you something about humans that clearly didn't make it into your species briefings. We're really, really good at pretending to be harmless right up until the moment we're not." She gestured to the tactical display one final time. "And we're absolutely exceptional at turning other people's strengths into their weaknesses. It's kind of our thing." The aftermath of what would become known as the Thompson incident rippled through the Galactic Defense Academy like a shock wave through a carefully ordered universe. Admiral Korax spent the next 6 hours in emergency session with the Academy's senior staff, while Maya sat in the conference room providing what she diplomatically called constructive feedback on their training protocols. Her official report, which would later be classified at the highest levels, contained 47 specific recommendations for system improvements and a polite suggestion that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy's military leadership should reconsider their assumptions about inferior species. Commander Vextar, meanwhile, found himself reassigned to Administrative Processing Station Delta 7, a remote asteroid facility whose primary function was filing reports that nobody would ever read. His duties now included inventory management for pencil erasers and the occasional maintenance check on coffee machines that had been broken since before his species achieved spaceflight. "But I don't understand," he'd protested during his final performance review. "How was I supposed to know she was a trained intelligence operative?" Perhaps. Admiral Korax had replied with the kind of patience usually reserved for small children and mentally deficient computers, that by considering the possibility that a species capable of achieving faster than light travel might have developed 1 or 2 individuals with above-average intelligence. The Academy's curriculum received a complete overhaul within the month. The new training programs included mandatory courses in cross-species tactical analysis, unconventional warfare recognition, and why underestimating your opponents is bad for your career and also your life expectancy. Maya, for her part, accepted the Academy's offer to establish a new department dedicated to human military doctrine. Her first lecture, titled Asymmetrical Warfare, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Chaos, was standing room only. Her second lecture required 3 separate venues to accommodate the demand. "You know," she said to Zrock, Quilia, and Bex during what had become a weekly dinner tradition, "I actually feel a little bad about Vextar. You destroyed his career and probably his will to live," Bex pointed out, though his tone was more admiring than critical. "He had it coming," Quilia added, her mandibles clicking with amusement, "though I admit I'm curious about something. When did you know you were going to do all this?" Maya considered the question while poking at something that might have been alien pasta or possibly sentient noodles. "Honestly, about 30 seconds after Vextar introduced me as his perfect example. The moment someone tells me I'm supposed to represent the failure of my entire species, I tend to get a little competitive." "A little competitive," Zrock repeated, his crystalline features somehow managing to convey deep skepticism. "You turned a military academy upside down and redefined interspecies relations across the galaxy." "Yeah, well," Maya shrugged, "humans don't really do anything halfway." 6 months later, when the Carithian Empire launched their surprise attack on the Outer Rim territories, they encountered something their war planners hadn't anticipated: the human-trained defenders who fought with what the official reports described as tactically impossible creativity. The Carithian fleet, which had successfully conquered 17 star systems using conventional military doctrine, found themselves facing opponents who used asteroid fields as kinetic weapons, turned cargo ships into guided missiles, and somehow managed to make defensive positions that moved. The war lasted exactly 3 weeks before the Carithian Empire requested peace negotiations. In her final report to Human Strategic Command, Maya included a single recommendation that would become the unofficial motto of human military doctrine throughout the galaxy. Never let them see you coming, and when they finally do, make sure they're too confused to do anything about it. The galaxy learned its lesson well. Humans were no longer dismissed as primitive upstarts stumbling around the edges of galactic civilization. They were now regarded with the kind of wary respect usually reserved for natural disasters and cosmic phenomena that defied scientific explanation. Maya Thompson had indeed served as an example, though not quite the one Commander Vextar had intended. She'd become a warning that echoed through every military academy, every strategic planning session, and every diplomatic encounter across the known galaxy. Never, ever underestimate a species that considers creative problem-solving a form of entertainment. And somewhere on Administrative Processing Station Delta 7, Commander Vextar filed his daily reports and wondered how his perfect demonstration had turned into the galaxy's most expensive lesson in humility. He never did figure it out, but then again, that was probably the point.